guest today is the one and only Dr. Farrah, a nurse leader guru. She has been featured on Jennifer Hudson Show and is just doing amazing things in nursing leadership today. I would love to welcome Dr. Farrah. Please introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, what you're about, and what are we building for the nursing practice and the future of nurses today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I've been following you for quite some time, so excited to be on together to talk about all great things. So really, to wrap it up, I've been a nurse over 20 years. I know it's hard to believe because, I look so young. And I started out in the ER, went into education, and then fast forward into some leadership roles. But what I like to tell the story is, I'm sure we all have comeback stories and adversities and things like that, but I've, came across a lot of discrimination, some racism, bullying in nursing, but it's really how you kind of turn your story around and how you're able to be resilient and really take those stories and kind of flip it into something positive. And always been a big advocate for our profession, the nursing profession. For myself, as a novice nurse going to kind of being a more expert nurse, I developed the skills to really advocate for myself and my colleagues in the nursing profession. So what I do now is I'm a career coach, a nurse career coach for new grads, particularly new grads, but I help all nurses from all over. So I started my business about 3 years ago because it stemmed from my own stories when I first started as a nurse. So that's kind of like a little bit of my journey. 6 times board certified, doctorally prepared. And yes, was featured on Jennifer Hudson because I'm a big believer in building up your brand as a nurse and really networking, which I kind of failed to do early on. So I'm sure we'll get into all of this. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Your voice is so imperative for the profession. It is imperative for future nurse leaders. I hear when I mentee and meet with a lot of the nurses today, when they hear leadership and being at the forefront as a nurse leader, a nursepreneur, I want to go get my, DNP and nurse practitioner route. So let's talk about why it's so important for nurses to hop into leadership and why we need them at these leadership positions. Why be the CNO? Why be the director, VP of nursing? Why go into operations in nursing practice? Why is that important? Why do we need them in that space?
Set the stage and give a little context. As we know, all nurses, no matter where you are in your career, you have to also see yourself as a leader, number one, regardless of the position you're in or the badge or the title that you wear, right? Even as a nursing student, you can exhibit leadership skills and take on these leadership roles, right? I've met some amazing nurses, actually from New York, because most of my time was spent in New York. I worked in Canada and now New Jersey, but I spoke at the New York State Nursing Convention. I met great nurses, and they're doing amazing things as nursing students. So I want people who are watching to know, obviously, that you can lead from any position. However, if we want to advance our profession and move it forward, we have to be able to take on more responsibility, even though it does seem daunting at times. And if we want change, right, sounds kind of cliche, but they always say, right, be the change you want to see. Because a lot of times in nursing, we want to change things, but we feel like we're not heard, right? We feel like we're bringing these issues up to leadership. Nothing is happening because obviously there's a lot of complexities. However, one of my big goals, and I'm sure as you and a lot of others in nursing, is we want to increase diversity, not only in the workforce, right? But also in leadership positions, right? And actually, I had the pleasure to meet Dr. Cecilia Georges in DC. She used to teach at Lehman College, huge nursing legend. And she's such an inspiration. And actually, I know that she led the nursing on boards, right? About 10 years ago, they came with this idea that nurses should be on boards, not particularly just in healthcare, but all across. Because what? nurses run things, right? Like we know what's going on.
That's hard. You're 100%.
Right.
Correct. And I tell my, as nurses, if we're not invited to the table, you better bring your chair, because we're gonna be at the table, and it's so
right.
know our voices. And when our key stakeholders tend to make a lot of critical decisions that impact nursing practice and how we operate and how we provide care to patients, what leads to our patient outcomes.
Right.
So I think being in leadership really sets the bar and sets the tone for the organization cannot function and run without the nurse leaders. You need your nurses, you need your clinical coordinators, your resources, all the tiers of nursing leadership from bedside up is so crucial. And for them to be that voice at those decision-making tables is so important. And of course, the diversity in it.
Yes.
The diversity in it is so important. You look at the statistics on CNLs, chief nursing officers, VP of nursing officers. What's the data on diversity in those positions? Very minimal statistics.
Right. And why is that, right? I'm somebody who likes to bring up all the positive things in our profession, but also I like to keep it real because, growing up in nursing, right? Growing up in nursing as a nursing novice, I never knew terms like sponsorship. I didn't know what that was, right? I was a big advocate for mentorship early on, but I didn't have a lot of mentors myself. Like I had a great preceptor to start out in the emergency room. But as I share the story all the time, nursing school can be very difficult for many, right? Just academically, and also just that transition of practice, and even just, going through all the motions of nursing school clinically and everything. As we see, even in academia, there's not a lot of diversity as well. In my nursing program, this was in Canada, no diversity. There was no male faculty, mostly white, female faculty. And I felt like there wasn't a lot of support as, about to graduate, and one of them asks me, what type of nurse do you want to be? And I said, I want to be an ER nurse. She laughed at me and said, you'll never be an ER nurse. So of course, being so ambitious as nurses, we're like, okay, watch me. Like I'm going to be one of the most badass ER nurses around, and you can't stop me. Right. So that's what I did. Very ambitious. And that's kind of what led me to start my business as well, to help these other nurses, because that feeling like, oh man, I want to do this. I want to do that. And then the narrative is like, well, you got to start in med surg. Nothing against med surg, but you don't have to start in med surg, right? And that's the beauty of our profession. There's so many things, but I think the system, meaning the healthcare system, a little bit of academia, we're kind of failing our novice nurses by not giving them the support that they need, and our leaders as well, because there's no real structured onboarding or orientation. And I always say, it's not like you're going to pull somebody from, med surg or outpatient and say, hey, go to the ICU, good luck. But that's what we do to our nurse leaders most of the time.
Oh, here you go, figure it out. It's like, wait a minute. I need to learn management. I need to know about how to loosen. I need to learn about staffing ratios. I need to learn about so much more. Disaster planning, emergency preparedness, compliance. What happens and DPH walks through the door. The preparedness for that is not there. And I think as we hear the amazing voice of Dr. Farrah today, this is what we're trying to do as this collaboration is hear them for these things, because like you said, Dr. Farrah, that's not given.
Right. And I think that's where, yes, on paper, sometimes they'll have these mentorship programs or these things, but it's truly not enough. And then you get leaders that go into these positions that want to do great things, but they're not given the support, the resources to do so. And then it's like they fail. Then they internalize it and think like, oh man, I didn't do a good job. But really, it's not you. You weren't really supported in these roles. So that's why I think podcasts like yours really help nurses in leadership and then transition. So thank you for all you do too for nursing.
Amazing. I mean, I love the set because we keep it real. We keep it honest. They get the real of nursing when they join the Leading with Dr. Bentil show, because it's a lot that they're going to endure, that they're not going to have that support, that helping hand to say, oh, this is how you navigate through this challenge. This is how you tap into this leadership component of leadership style. And what is your style? Learning all these different, things that manage people. You're gonna, one of the hardest things we can do in life, especially as a leader, is managing individuals. And it's like, whoa, everyone with different personalities, everybody got their own problems. They want you to solve it. And you're like, whoa, I got my own problems.
That piece is huge. Yeah.
It's the piece. It is the real. And have potential with these future nurses that are coming into the game. They're strong, they're smart, they know what they want, they have a vision, they're innovative. And it's we really need to continue to grow them. You have great programs, Dr. Farrah, that you run. I would love for us to hear more about what you do and your business and how we can get our future leaders engaged.
Yeah, I mean, number one, I think, like you said, nurses want to go into nursing, obviously, to make an impact, help communities, help individuals, even if it's not on a direct patient care front. Holistically, they have to think, what are other roles, even globally, like health policy and all these other roles that they can go into. So I think maybe in academia, we do touch on health policy and some other things, but really, what are the next steps to get into it? We have health policy courses and classes, but really, how do you get there? So I think mentorship is big. If nurses are watching and they're interested in maybe a specific field that not a lot of people go into, I think getting a mentor is huge. And even just having multiple mentors, not just one. Also, having a nurse career coach. Like myself, what I do is I help direct nurses and guide them into the areas that they're truly passionate about. Some people know, they get out there like, I want to be an L&D nurse. I want to work in the community. I want to work in psychiatry. They know. But then there are others that are like, I'm not quite sure what to go into. So I help them with that clarity. The other thing that a lot of nurses get a little bit confused is they don't figure out the type of lifestyle that they want to live first.
Oh yes, that part. Come on today. Yeah.
Before they go into roles, right? And I think a lot of times it's like this shiny object syndrome, right? Where a lot of people, like I probably get it too. Like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? They'll look at other nurses and like, oh, well, yeah, I want to be a nurse practitioner. But it's like, did you really do the research? Like, is that really what you want to do? And then looking at the financial aspect, like, are you going to make that money? Because a lot of times we don't talk about the money. If you're a staff nurse for about 10, 15, 20 years, and now you want to go on to be a nurse practitioner, that's another advocacy part. That's a whole nother show to like how to make more money as a nurse, right? And how to negotiate. But you have to realize, coming from experience, sometimes they're not going to look at that past experience as you're going into a nurse practitioner role. Now, psych NP is probably one of the better areas where a lot of people are doing much better in terms of salary. But you got to look at everything and be like, do I really want to do acute care NP? Because guess what? You're going to be working weekends. You're going to be probably working different shifts. Now, if you have kids and, you're not about that life, then maybe you need to look at something else that's going to afford you more flexibility in your schedule and things like that, right? So definitely those are some things to look at when you're looking at what type of role you want to go into next. So I hope that answers your question.
That's definitely helpful. It definitely answers, and I think more importantly, it's going to be helpful to the nurses coming into the field, that's already in the field and looking into going to leadership or any different graduate programs. There's so many specialties, right. And sometimes the mentees like, school's not going nowhere.
Right.
Colleges is also a business. They go in, they get their BSN, and they're rushing. I got to get my doctorate, or they're doing the MS DNP program, and not knocking that, but try to be the expert in nursing practice. Learn, have your knowledge base that you practice because you don't want to get that degree as a novice nurse that's still learning the ropes in nursing, or, it's a fine line. It's very ambitious, which we're not knocking. We love that.
Love school. Yeah. I mean,
not knocking that, but when you're at a doctorate level, you're at an expertise level, and your patients are going to expect that level of care as well. And leadership as well. They're going to expect you to, be able to do change management, conflict resolutions, come up with, lead the teams effectively. So we want them to, I really, what I do with my program is prepare them for that. We have to prepare. We have their back on the back end. We got you.
Yes. I mean, there's so many things like you mentioned in leadership. And I think a lot of times some nurses are kind of pushed into leadership position, or sometimes if they're in a place where, there's a lot of high turnover, sometimes you get pushed into leadership positions. Or maybe you're just a really good nurse, like high functioning nurse, really good with your patients, but that doesn't always translate to a good leader either, right? So I think sometimes we as nursing in general have to be very careful about who we're putting into leadership positions and really do a good assessment. Like, do they want to be there, or are they just kind of voluntold, right? Because that's part of, like you said, what you're helping nurses with, if they want to be there, then great. And that's kind of like, for me, like I said, I help all nurses, but the majority of the nurses that come to me and work with me as a nurse career coach are more novice nurses. And that excitement that they get from, coming out of school, I want to keep that excitement going and say, hey, you want to be a pediatric nurse? You want to be a NICU nurse? Go for it. Why put them somewhere they don't want to be? Then that enthusiasm and that passion for nursing starts kind of dying down. And guess what? We talk about burnout and all this. If nurses are not happy, right, it equals poor patient outcomes, or even just in other aspects, whether it's non-direct patient care, we lose nurses in the profession, and we don't want to lose any nurses because there's so much to do, right? Like, so much. That's why we love nursing, because it's honestly the best.
So broad. And when you think about all the specialties that we encompass it, I mean, you see nurse informaticians, informatics is doing great things, our quality nurse specialists, and it's an empire of nursing, and the world needs it. It's an international field, and I think individuals like yourself that are continue to build and elevate the nursing profession as a whole is so crucial to the field.
And thank you for that. And one thing I want to mention, I appreciate your positivity too and enthusiasm in our profession, because people are watching us, right? Yeah. People are watching us, and we have to be aware of how we represent our own profession. Yes, there's a nursing shortage, they say, but to me, I think there's more of a nursing retention crisis than a shortage. People want people to come to the profession. And if the media or other people are kind of knocking down nursing and don't have a true perspective of what it is, we're the ones, it's our duty to teach the public really what nursing is, what it offers, and really what it can do. It changes people's lives. Like, obviously, I'm not going to get into too much international nursing, but I went to school in Canada, came to the US to do travel nursing, but we could see internationally, right? Like people from the Philippines and other countries, West Africa, whatever, people are going to Ireland, like everywhere. It's really changing people's lives, and globally, it's very interchangeable, meaning like what we're learning. Nursing is nursing wherever you are. Obviously, there's different aspects, but it's truly life changing. And I think that people need to understand, if you're thinking about nursing, I encourage you to go into it for the right reasons if you're really passionate about it, because it is a great profession. Yeah,
absolutely agree. Like it. Don't do. Well, my mama made me pick nursing because she said I'm always have a job. Oh, but this is probably not the job for you. This is not probably And I do hear that sometimes.
Right.
I got because of job security, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah. It's not that type.
You know, you really gotta like this because you gotta like, the fun that you're gonna see. You have to be able to hold the patient's hand and say everything's gonna be okay. You gotta be ready to say, oh my goodness, what's coming in at me, tuberculosis. You gotta be ready for the field and what comes with the. So it's for some and it's not for all, but nursing is definitely a cutthroat field, but such a rewarding field at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's what I say. Like, right now I'm in the education space, but the entrepreneurship piece and that piece is like, it's very rewarding as yourself, as you're helping these leaders develop and advance. When just recently, one of my clients actually just landed a position in such a short time, like literally days. And she's a more experienced nurse, but she was a little bit hesitant, right? Like a lot of the work that I do is not just like how to interview and like how to build a resume. It's more mindset, how to present yourself, a lot of branding, because a lot of nurses want to like shy away from their accomplishments, and they're like told to be humble, but I'm all like, you got to be bold and like articulate your value, like right. And I think it's okay to shine. Actually, Dr. Danielle McKamey from DMPs of Color, I'm part of DMPs of Color too, had a really nice post on LinkedIn about shining. Like, it's okay for nurses to shine. So, that's kind of a message to nurses out there. Like, don't play small. Nurses do a lot of things.
Yes, we do.
High achievers. So, celebrate those wins and celebrate each other and support each other. So I love your platform, and, thank you so much for all you do again for nurses.
Well, I am thrilled to have you today. We want to see more and more. And then we need to hear from you. That is empowerment for these nurses and nurse leaders and nurses going into nurse leaders or preparing themselves. You talked about that executive presence and interviewing. These are things and tips that we can continue to provide those gems to them to really get the profession more diverse.
Yes.
You would say, get them more woke to nursing practice and building the DMPs of colors. And hey, there's MSNs of colors, there's BSNs of colors,
right.
That and show and really showcase what the profession can do when we are working holistically and really embracing change and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dr. Farrah, thank you so much for joining today. And
thanks so much. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure. And really, you need to come on the Nursing Dose. I'm going to have to invite you on very soon.
Dose up, give some doses of nursing. Everyone, thanks Dr. Farrah for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Yes, and wait, follow me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And go to my website. I'm going to drop it, nursefarrah.com, and check out all the YouTube videos and everything that I drop. And follow Dr. Bentil too. She has great content. Thank you so much.
Thank you.